All right. I am here joined once again by my friend Julie Mastrini. How are you doing today or tonight, ma'am?
I'm doing well. Nice to see you again.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell my days from nights the way things are going. So just forgive me.
It's okay. I get it.
Yeah.
It's a weird time of year.
Well, I'm the only driver at work right now. So
Oh, so
yeah,
you're working a lot.
I'm working as much as they'll let me pretty much.
That
So
sounds like a lot.
it's it's a lot more than I'm used to working anymore. I'm old. I used to work a lot more than this, but now I'm getting old and my body's like, I don't like this anymore.
So what is your range of distance? Like, do you travel?
100 miles
Okay.
in any direction. Yeah. So
Interesting.
so from Orange, because we're right here on the Gulf, right at the border of Louisiana. I'll go almost to Lafayette at times. I'll go to Toledo Bend. I'll go tomorrow. I'm going to Cameron, Louisiana. So yeah, we go all over the place, but it's within 100 miles.
Okay. Man, that would stress me out. It took me like 10 years to become not a stressful driver, but I still don't like it. Like every time I get on an airplane, I remind myself that driving is less safe than being on an airplane.
Mm.
But then every time I'm in a car, I'm thinking about how driving is less safe than being on an airplane. And it just freaks me out, you know? I don't know. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do what you do. I'd have too much anxiety.
Man, I've done it for 21 years. It's just like second nature now. I
Yeah.
just go and do. And so, I mean, things happen still. I was stuck in the mud yesterday, so
Oh,
things do happen. But
okay.
other than that, nothing too bad.
You just do it.
Yep, it's just what I do. Just can't let that stuff bother you. It's like
Yeah.
anything else. When you're engaging in anything, you you're gonna fail and things are gonna go wrong, and
Yeah.
you just gotta kind of shrug it off and go on and do it again. And
I was thinking about this today actually because I was thinking about like things not being perfect and how frustrating that is. But also, it's the only way that we can grow is if things aren't perfect. Like God allows that to grow us,
mm,
right? So, like, there's no need for virtues like patience or um whatever it may be if things are just like good all the time, you know?
yeah,
Like actually, because okay, I've been cranky up until this year about Orthodox fasting. Like just didn't understand it, didn't want to do it, like cranky about it. And then my friend sent me a clip and it was some guy, I don't actually know who he is, but he has a big podcast, but he was saying like when you're fasting, it shows you who you really are because it's like when you're feeling deprived or like hungry or like whatever, like who are you under those conditions? Who are you when things aren't perfect? And like that's what really shows what you're made of. So after I heard that, I was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. That makes me like actually feel motivated to fast now after like years of not getting it, not knowing like why I should do it. And even asking priests, be like, why do we fast? They'd be like, oh, that's good for you. I'm like, why is it good for me? Like, I need more substance to the response than that, or I'm not gonna like, or I'm just gonna rebel because I have this rebellious nature, you know? So
well,
I don't know.
I'm terrible too. Like Lent for me is pretty easy. I
Mm,
mean, I'll still have a couple of beers when I get home from work and stuff like that, but
hmm.
for the most part, it's easy. I'm like, all right, then this is what I got to do for the next 40 days. This is what I got to do.
Huh.
Where it gets me is in between fasts when it's like Wednesday and Friday because I don't know what day it is half the time. So I just get up and I go about my day. And
Oh,
then like
yep.
and because I've been driving truck for so long, it's so ingrained in me to find something easy to eat while I'm driving.
Yeah.
90% of the time it's a burger. And
Uh-huh.
so I'll get halfway through the burger and I'll be like, "Oh, it's Wednesday."
Yep. That has happened to me
Okay.
so many times. So like, I don't know what day of the week it is until I'm halfway through my meal, and then it dawns on me at that moment. So yeah, I've had that too.
Right.
Because you get into your routine, right? And it's hard to remember to make a new routine. Yeah, and then I don't know, like not eating meat. I was very like, it took me years to figure out how to eat a healthy diet because I grew up with like a, boomer parents that thought that like
Hamburger
processed,
helper.
yeah, like processed junk was cool. And I ate a lot of junk growing up and a lot of sugar. And like, so it took me years to figure out like, okay, meat's good, butter's good, like fat is good, animal fat. Um, and to figure all that out. So I got really resentful when I found out about Orthodox fasting because I was like, wait a minute, it took me forever to figure out how to eat. And now I have to figure out how to eat vegan, like I was like cranky about it. So, but
I gotta send you the cookbook my wife's put together for fasting. I gotta send it
yeah.
to you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is now that I'm building up recipes, I'm less cranky about it. So it's just, but that takes time.
Mm.
Um, so and I still like I've made this like vegan egg salad like twice in the last 7 days because it's good, but it's got like tofu in it and stuff. But it's like the first vegan recipe I've found that like I actually like. So I just need more of those and then I'll do it. But yeah, it's I needed the reason why it was like good to do. And then also just that would give me the motivation to figure it out. But when I didn't have that piece, I was like, I'm just mad about this. Why do we do this?
Well, and she started making the shake this year. It's really good. It's bananas, dates, raw cashews, raw almonds, raw pistachios, and almond milk.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's perfect for breakfast. Like I'll be
Yeah.
drinking my coffee, I'll drink a glass of it. It'll hold me over till almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
The protein is the issue. I was not getting enough protein. And then I'd be like, I was in church last Wednesday for a pre-sanctified liturgy. And I was like, I am starving. Like I did not get enough protein today and I feel like I'm going to pass out. But you have
Mm.
to figure out the substitute. So it's a learning curve. But even the spiritual side of like why we do it, um, it's starting to click. It's like the last thing in Orthodoxy that's clicked. Well, aside from like, the basis, as far as the basics go. So, and I have Catholic friends and I was raised Catholic and they just don't. They're like, oh yeah, no meat or no meat on Fridays, right? That's it all
Mm.
year. And I'm like, yeah, Orthodox are pretty hardcore. And sometimes I'm even like, if I think there's somebody who um might be interested in Orthodoxy, like that, I don't lead with how much we fast because I think to someone who's not used to it, they might be like turned off by it. Like, oh my God, that sounds really hard. Why would I want to do that? Like the other, I lead with like the other aspects of like what I like about Orthodoxy. Um, and the fasting is usually the last thing I discuss with them because I think it can be a little
Well,
hard.
and typically priests are usually pretty good about working with people and figuring out what their current diet is in
Mm.
order to try to help them. Hey, like, why don't you try it without this or try it without that and take it one step at a time.
Yeah, my priest has been very like, don't rush into it. Don't try to do the whole fast all at once. Like, go easy on yourself. Like that was what he always said. So, and that's good. It's good advice. Because it is a lot. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, Catholic Easter is, well, and Protestant Easter, Western Easter is on Sunday. I don't know if you have people in your life who are like celebrating this weekend. Um, but now I, you know, go to my, like they're done with Lent just about. It's weird.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah.
I don't know any Catholics. Like, not, I mean, I know some, but I'm not familiar with their season or how they
Yeah.
go through this
Yeah.
stuff. And
So even
Protestants don't really recognize Lent. They're just kind of like, yeah, Good Friday, it's Easter. Have
yes.
fun. Goodbye.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know.
Yeah, exactly. For us, it's like a whole bigger thing, which I think is great because then like when Pascha finally comes, it's like huge. It's like so much more meaningful when you've fasted and it's been a long time and like that period of restriction makes the holiday so much more big and vibrant.
Mm, mm.
It's like my priest said that he converted after seeing a Pascha service, and I get why,
Oh
because
yeah,
it's so like
elaborate.
awesome. Yeah, and then
My dad is actually being baptized this Saturday.
really,
Yes.
that's awesome. Is
So
that
I'm
your
I'm
influence?
unfortunately. Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
He could have found a better influence.
Glory to God. No, that's wow.
Yeah.
How cool.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because I started thinking about this topic, and we're going to get into the topic here shortly.
Oh
I
yeah.
started thinking about this topic, and then I discovered my mom is kind of in the same place. And I'm like, "Oh,
As your
interesting."
dad, you mean? Or
No,
as
as the
oh,
topic we're about to discuss.
okay, sweet. That'll
Yeah.
be good. I want
Yeah.
to hear uh I want to hear about that because I have thoughts too, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, let's dive in. So, what Julie and I had decided to talk on was the community within the Orthodox. And one of the things I heard was a priest talking about how men are more attracted to the intellectual side. Now, obviously, we're grading on a bell curve. This isn't going to go for every man. It's not going to go for every woman. But men are typically attracted to the intellectual side, whereas women are more attracted to the community side of things. And that so it's very easy, and it explains a lot about why you see so many young men joining orthodoxy, because it's so easy to just get intellectually stimulated and stay engaged. But building relationships, that takes some time. That takes a while. Now, the way this priest described it, and I apologize, I can't remember who it was that I heard say this, but the way he describes it, he says, right about the time the man runs out of stamina from this initial surge into orthodoxy, he's been dragging his wife along with him, and she's beginning to build relationships. So when he runs out of stamina, then she's leading the race, and she's pulling him into through until
Oh,
he rebuilds that stamina back up. Then they eventually come to a place where they both level out and they find their place within the church.
cool.
But building relationships within the Orthodox Church is is difficult. And I was lucky in this case because my wife is atheist and it is just me. I was able to do both and be intellectually stimulated and build these relationships. And it's because the Antiochians are known as the more hospitable of the Orthodox, right?
Yeah.
But if you enter into a Greek circle specifically, they're notorious for being very difficult to penetrate and to
Yep.
build these
Insular.
relationships.
Yeah.
Right. But once you get in, then you're in for life. There's no
Mhm.
getting out now, you know. So
There's no getting it.
so have you recognized kind of the struggle to build these relationships?
No, I had a totally different experience. Like, okay, I'll say this. When the first Orthodox church I ever went to was in rural Pennsylvania in a dying town, and it was super unfriendly. And I was like, I'm never becoming Orthodox because this is the most unfriendly place I've ever been. And but I had also been to Catholic churches that weren't friendly. Protestant churches always were friendly, but the Catholic ones really weren't. And it was one of one of the things that was happening for me is I was looking for a community, like first and foremost. And that's what brought me back to Christianity because I realized because I tried to have I'm going a little bit farther back here, but I guess the context is irrelevant. I tried to form communities around different things. So like I'm a fire dancer. So I tried to have that be my community and my like church, so to speak. And that was insufficient because these people were often like polyamorous and doing a lot of drugs and like the behaviors weren't good. And there was like a lack of like trust and let's say generative behavior. It was degenerative behavior. Then I tried to have my community be this psychedelic art church in upstate New York. And that was all new age. And they were like, oh, all religions are the same. This is a spiritual center, but we're not going to elevate one religion over another. It's like all the same. And then I realized that that place, the community also had the same problems. So like it was, people weren't having kids. People didn't bring their kids to this church. There was drug use, there was polyamory, all that stuff. So I was like, okay, I need a Christ-centered community. So that is what brought me back to Christianity in a big way. It was like the morality and the community aspect, the expectations on the members of the community. So I started exploring Christian churches, and I found that the Catholic churches didn't have strong communities that I could, at least not that I could penetrate. Like I'd go to a Catholic church and nobody would even say hi to me. Like I was new and nobody would say hi. And then the Protestant churches, like they kind of would. But what ended up happening is my friend brought me to an Anglican church and they had a coffee hour, and it was Anglican Catholic. So they're a very small denomination. It's not Anglican Protestant. There's a difference. And they had a coffee hour and everybody was super nice, and they like were putting whiskey in their coffee, and like, I don't know, it was just like kind of fun. And I was like, that's cool. So I started calling the Catholic churches and I was like, do you guys do coffee hour? And they like thought I was nuts. They were like, I don't know what you're talking about. So finally I go to an Orthodox church, the one I currently attend. And it was like immediately like everybody was like, hi, oh my gosh, here are some books. Like, come to our coffee hour. Like everybody was super, super friendly. So once I found like my Orthodox church, except for that one blip of the dying one in the rural town, once I found my Orthodox church, I feel like it was very, very easy to make connections and to build relationships. And that was what like immediately sucked me in and like kept me in Orthodoxy. So I don't know, but it could be because my church has a lot of old people and they were really excited for young people to be there. It could have been that. But I've also had the experience you said where like I've also traveled a lot and I've spent time at Greek churches, and I felt like I couldn't really break in, or like it wasn't as like yeah, like as friendly, or like I didn't feel like I was a part of their thing, or could be.
Like it was
So
cliquish.
yeah, it was like all the converts would hang out and then all the Greek families would hang out, and it was like, so but then like I don't know, but I feel like you're definitely correct though, that men tend to be drawn in through the like intellectual aspect, especially if they're people who are into history. A lot of men are really into history, I think, in a way that like women aren't. So like once you
We
start,
spend a lot of time thinking about the Roman Empire.
yeah, and so right, and I don't like, and as a woman, I don't like quite get it. I mean, it's cool, and so I think if you're like a guy and you're looking into history and the history of the church, you end up at Orthodoxy through like, I think there are a lot of men who are kind of like autistically into history and theology, and they end up at Orthodoxy that way. But a lot of women I know end up back at Christianity or Orthodoxy because they need a healthy community. Um, so that was the
That's
case for me.
that is funny you say that, because the first book I ever read that was Orthodox was Religion of the Apostles
Mm.
by Father Stephen DeYoung. And the second book I read was Rock and Sand by Father Josiah Trenum.
Oh, I don't know the Trenum one.
Oh, it's great. It goes
Uh,
through the history of the church as far as like um from the Great Schism on to Protestantism. So it covers all of that.
oh, interesting.
It's so good.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, so if you're a dude and you're like thinking that way, you like tunnel your way back to Orthodoxy. I tunneled my way back to Orthodoxy through trying on different communities. Seriously. It was like, oh, are the circus people in San Francisco my community? Doesn't quite feel right. Are the Catholics my community? Doesn't quite feel right. Are the Protestants my community? Doesn't quite feel right. Like, and and then I found the Orthodox community and I was like, this is the thing. Got it. Okay,
Mm.
here we go. And it's centered around, because I, I don't know, I just had the sense that it needed to be like centered around the truth and like the proper thing. All communities have issues. I'm not saying the Orthodox communities are perfect. But I remember when I was like trying to make like the circus community my thing, it was like I could sense there was like something hollow about the connections because we were all like activity partners and we weren't partners on this journey of like a larger truth or like sanctifying our souls. Like it was just about like dance and prop manipulation. That's what we call it. So it was too hollow. So then the way that people were treating each other wasn't like quite right. I didn't feel like people were really there for each other in the way that I felt was right. In fact, they were like actively against each other because if you're in like a polyamorous community, like you're all hurting each other, you're like sleeping with each other's partners or whatever the heck. Um, so yeah, like I think if women can sense that there's something off in like the American culture with just the degeneracy and how people behave. But I don't know, have you heard from women or anybody that it's hard to make like community connections or like relationships in Orthodoxy? Because it hasn't been my experience.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily hard. I think what I've witnessed with the women that I've encountered is that they see how quickly the man is attracted to this.
Oh.
And because it's so much easier to dial in on the intellect than it is to dial in on a personal relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like deep, ingrained personal relationships take time,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't take a long time to get somebody a light to flick on and you'd be like, wait a minute, I see something. There's something I got to know about this.
Yeah.
And so they pursue that. So I think what I've witnessed is that it takes longer to build the community. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not to say that people aren't rude, but people
Right.
can be cliquish. They get comfortable with their in group and
Yeah.
they remain within that in group.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I always said was when I got out of the military, I didn't miss the military, but I missed the brotherhood.
I've heard that from a lot of ex-military people.
And I joined I prospected with several motorcycle clubs looking for that. Like that
Yep.
just and building those relationships, it takes a long time to get
Mm-hmm.
there because you're not going through the stresses that you are in a military. And
And those
if you're
bond you, the stress bonds you. It's like why fraternities haze because stress bonds people together.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you're going into the Orthodox community, let's say you're a convert going into a community of cradle Orthodox, they're not going to feel the same stresses that you feel. They're not going to
Yeah.
have those same experiences. So that relatability is going to be a little bit more difficult to find because
That's a
they're not going to have that same kind of event take place in their life. So finding that correct church that kind of has the right amount of cradle Orthodox and the right amount of converts
yeah.
is important, I think.
Yeah, it's true. I think I tend to connect more quickly with converts. Um, because I mean, I can share a story with them about how I came to find the church and then ask them for their story. And there's often like similarities, especially if they were like, I like to call them COVID converts, like people who are coming into the church around like 2020.
Mm.
Um, there's like, oh, were you noticing all this crazy stuff in the world that I was noticing? And like that made you
Right.
realize the existence of evil and like
Yeah.
the church. Um, so I can connect with those folks. But also like I do have a lot of friends at my church that are cradle. So after a while, I think that kind of like evens out.
Right.
Um, but I've definitely found I've had like more to maybe talk about with converts because their journey kind of there's more like it's like you said almost it's like we've like been through more to get there
Mm.
so that I can like connect with them on that. Um and my closest friends are people that were kind of on that journey with me, like people that like when I came into the church, I came in with my best friend, my twin sister, and my best friend's husband. So we were like, and then a year later, another one of my best friends, and then a year later, another best friend. So it's kind of like we're all kind of really close in the timeline of our conversions. So I feel much more, I feel a lot of kinship with them. But I think like, I don't know, demographics are interesting because I do think that my church was very hungry for young people. And so when we came in, we brought a bunch of other like young people, millennials, and they were like so grateful for that, that there was just such a sense of warmth, and everybody was like interested in who we were because we were like newcomers and all this stuff, and they knew their church needed like new life and people to help. Um, and so that was good. But I think I've been to churches where, and I've spent a lot of time at like very large churches where I feel like I'm not needed, and there's already like they're good, like they have a ton of people, and like there's not as much for me to do or something. Like I kind of am grateful that the community of my church was so like hungry for new people, because I feel like I can be useful there. Um, and I've been to big giant churches in Austin, where I was just like, I don't know if I'm needed here, like I had this sense it wasn't where I belonged.
Mm.
Um, and which is fine. Like, um, but yeah, I think that I think there's also like myself and my best friend and my sister, we were really thinking about the concept of atomization in America, where like Americans are super individualistic and it's very easy to just like go to work and then come home and be in front of your screen and go to bed and like do that forever. And like how we've kind of lost a social life, like there's just been a sort of stripping out. It's like that book Bowling Alone. Do you know that book? I think
Mm-mm.
it was a book that I think came out, it might have been like the 90s or something, but it was about how America has had this decay of civic institutions. Americans used to be part of different like
Like
institutions and
Moose
stuff,
clubs and
clubs, yeah.
yeah,
And we don't like have that anymore, which I blame mass media, but who knows? It could be increased diversity does that. There are studies that show that the more diverse your society is, the less people engage in civic life. There's lower social trust. That's like a total thought crime that you're not allowed to say, but it's true.
I
So
would think inflating the dollar too, and creating a situation where um two working parents was a necessity
yes,
could erode
yes,
that,
because
because the
women used
moms
to,
don't get together and during the day anymore. And
yep,
yeah,
plan stuff, and the women could like plan the dinner parties and plan the social events on the weekends, and now like everybody has to work. I planned a party a month ago and it was a lot of work. If I'd like had a child, I don't think I would have been able to like do it, or it would have been like a lot harder. I don't know.
mhm,
I was just like, this is a ton of work, just to have like 30 people over at my house, and it was
right,
worth it. And everybody was so like enriched by the experience, but it's not like that's happening every weekend, because most of us don't have time to like do something like that, to plan something like that every weekend and make sure everybody has food and there's drink and like the house is clean and everything and you can actually host. So yeah, anyway, my friends and I were the issue of atomization and the like sort of death of like social life in general was a huge catalyst for me and my friends actually getting into church life. Uh and it's been great because it has really opened up. Now like most of my friends that I'm close with are people I met through church communities. It's not like they go to my church, but maybe they go to like a neighboring church or a church an hour away or like even an hour and a half away, but we like know each other and we all keep in touch, and like that's been my social network now. So it's much more enriching too, because it's like Christ centered. So everyone's trying to focus on being a better person. And that's who you want your community to be.
well, let's dig into this a little bit more, because you had mentioned that you had joined these other communities. You were
Yeah.
looking for that sense of community, that sense of belonging, and you found it with the Orthodox Church. But can we like try to compare and contrast in kind of more specific ways as to how that manifested itself within your life?
Yeah. Like, you mean how the need for that manifested, or how I
Well, like
identify
the
which
like
community?
do you notice like different character, different type of honor, different type of dependability? Like, are these things obvious to you?
Yeah, like, yeah, it was like, it felt like those other communities, people were very focused on, mm, I don't know, like just themselves. Like there wasn't this sense of like helping each other out, or like doing what was good for the other. It was all about like the self. It was like self worship was like a part of those communities, and they were breaking down and malfunctioning. Um, like for like I mentioned how a lot of those communities, people were very okay with open relationships and non-monogamy. And that's because the way that they think is like that freedom is the highest value, right? And I'm just gonna like freedom, freedom, freedom. Like we should all be free. We shouldn't hold each other back. Like the way to serve all of our highest good is to give each other as much freedom as possible. And it's like actually in a community when you're duty bound, like you're not as free as you were, right? Like if there's a young kid at church who like doesn't have a car and needs help getting to work, like you help him get to, maybe you give him a ride, right? So you're not
Mhm.
as free, right? Because you have a duty to other people. So it's kind of like the communities that I was in, I was noticing that like the character of the people in those communities wasn't like actually about serving each other. It was just about serving the self. And that's also why you get the drug use too, because it's all about like me feeling good kind of thing. And they don't have like sacraments and stuff. So their sacrament is like dropping acid and dancing, you know.
Mhm.
Um, so it was that, and then and it was just like all the morals were kind of upside down. I like the other thing was like sort of the concept of like tough love. Like I noticed that in these communities, if somebody was like hurting themselves actively, like I had a friend who was addicted to meth, and I was like, she was always needing financial help. She needed me to like buy her tampons and buy her a train ticket. And like she was like, we would help her get a job, and then she would do drugs and miss work and get fired. And so after many months or even like a year or more, I don't even know how long it was, of helping her by giving her things, I was like, I need to tell her that I will take her to rehab, but I'm not providing any more like financial support because she needs to like hit rock bottom and see what her life is and help herself. And that's kind of the tough love approach, right? Like, and the other people in this community did not understand. They thought I was just being heartless. And I was like, no, to be loving to her, there needs to be a boundary where she learns how to stand on her own.
Well,
Like,
she's not getting any healing from
yes, from enabling.
continuing. Right.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
were enabling her. And I was like, we need to stop enabling her and give her, a final kind of an ultimatum, but like, go get help for your drug use. We're not going to give you money anymore. And they were like, no, 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 she just needs love. She just needs support. Like this, their idea of compassion was very different than mine, right? Like my idea of helping her was to help her to become self-sufficient, be able to help herself. I knew that none of us were going to be able to like do that deep work for her. So it was like stuff like that. And then also, like I said, um, the non-monogamy hurts other people because if you're just free to like sleep around with anybody, you're like hurting other people, right? Like I had a friend who was like dating a guy and they were open and they went on a trip, or he went on a trip without her, and he was like flirting with some other girl there or like cuddling with her and something, and she was hurt. But nobody in her community would have kept his behavior in line by being like, yo, dude, don't do that. Think about your girl. Like, what are you doing? None of them would have kept his behavior in check because in their minds, they're all free and do whatever you want. It's all good, right? So I was like, I need a community with like a moral code where we place boundaries on each other's behavior and enforce those boundaries. Does that make sense?
It does. And
Yeah.
I think part of it was you were raised Catholic, and so you had this instilled within you.
Yes.
Whereas many of these people didn't grow up with the same moral like boundaries.
Exactly. And so we just had, it was like this deep disconnect where I was like, this isn't who I am, and this isn't the type of community I want to be in. And I think this stuff is wrong, but I was having trouble connecting with people because we were just coming from a different place. And I was like, and I had that metric of comparison where I'm from a small Catholic town where like people don't act this way. And also like even like the virtue of working hard, right? Like you sacrifice some of your freedom to work, to like make money and not be like a mooch on the people around you. Like there was a lot of that going on. These are like, and people who are familiar with like the EDM Burning Man circles will know, we even have like words for people where we would call them oh my God, what was, there's a slang term for like uh people that like mooch off of other people in the community and they don't really like up
Bums.
there and everything. That's what that is the colloquial term. Oh, was it a wook? I think it was a wook, but I've been out of it for years, so now I don't remember the slang. But yeah, just like people that would kind of mooch off other people and not really like work very hard or like uphold their end of things. That was really common. Whereas in like a Christian community, since the fundamental like thing with Christianity is like picking up your cross and bearing it, all that comes with that is like a sense of duty and responsibility to each other, even if it means sacrificing like something important to you. Maybe it's your freedom, maybe it's your time, like whatever it is, for the benefit of others. So I was like, I needed to find a community that understood that. And I slowly realized that it was like Christian communities that were going to be like living the way that I thought we ought to live in a way that's generative. Because those other values are degenerative. They weren't, it wasn't building, it wasn't like moving forward. Um, and yeah, I don't know. That was, I'd say those are the top level things, but there were a million little things that were making me realize those communities weren't the right ones to like put my stake in the ground and stay.
Do you feel like it was a lesson you had to learn though?
Oh, absolutely. Because I wouldn't have, it's kind of like maybe not everybody's like this, but I really needed to go see the opposite of what I was raised with to like even
Well,
see
it's
what
kind
I
of like the Amish kicking their kids out for a year, type deal.
yeah, it's like you don't know what you have. I was raised Christian. It was cool. But I didn't know what I
Oh, so
had.
it's like in a sad 80s song. You don't know what you got until it's gone.
Yeah. And I needed like it helped me to be able to like articulate it, which is nice. I always feel like I needed people to be able to articulate why we do things the way we
Mm.
do them. And nobody around me really was doing that. So I needed to kind of figure that out. So no, it was all very important lessons, but I still see like young people falling into some of the traps of thinking that, yeah, these like perverse communities are good for them. And yeah, it's so we all need that. It's funny, like I even like every Sunday would go to the park and meet up with the circus people. And that was my like and it was Sundays. Like it's almost
Yeah.
like we're built for like a Sunday ritual,
Yeah.
right?
It was just ritualistic.
But
Have you read Marriage and Family Life by St. John Chrysostom?
um
It's like three
it's
homilies.
isn't it kind of short? I think I have.
It's small. It's like 80
Yeah.
pages.
Yeah.
So I read the first homily not that long ago. I ended up lending it to a friend before I could read the other two homilies in it. But one of the things that like really struck my attention in the first homily was when he started getting into slavery
Oh.
and slavery and freedom. And so he's kind of making the comparison that you intentionally bonded yourself to this marriage rather than strike out on the freedom of sleeping around and being
Hmm.
um you know
Promiscuous.
promiscuous. Thank you, I
Yeah.
needed that word, I was looking for it, it was
Yeah.
there somewhere.
Yeah.
um so he makes that comparison, and he's saying sometimes the slave is freer than the free man. And this is something that I just recorded a podcast a few weeks ago about this exact thing, about how freedom isn't necessarily the bondage you feel. Oh, when I talked to Joseph Shambra,
Umbra, yeah.
so we had this conversation about like that bondage that freedom delivers, that like you feel like you're in chains when you're addicted to drugs, or you're an alcoholic, or you're a sex addict, or whatever it is, that this is a type of bondage, and sometimes enslaving yourself to a higher power, to Christ, to these higher standards is actually better for you. And this is kind of how St. John Chrysostom like discussed marriage in
Mm,
in the first homily. He was like, you got to tie yourself to that person, and you make yourself a slave to that person, where they own you and you own them, so that everything is done in a way to keep you in line so that you can benefit spiritually in the long run. And I thought that was a really interesting, because it was something that I was like right on the tip of. I was kind of trying to find the balancing act for. I was trying to figure out. And it sounds like that's a lot what you're saying, is these people have had turned so free, let's say hedonistic in a way, that it was actually enslaving them, and it was
yes.
like controlling them. It was contorting their whole lives. It was so unnatural that it was destroying them. And
Yep.
you recognize this, and you're like, okay, I got to get out of this situation. And
Yep.
when you looked at the Orthodox Christianity that actually bonded themselves and forced themselves into this service of one another, that you found an actual type of freedom.
Yes, it's a total paradox. It's very hard to comprehend. But the other way that I realized this is that the community I was living in was very like pro open borders. And I realized that the only place I was like truly free was like the walls of my own home. So like I wasn't free out on the streets because the streets were so free that it was a free for all, right? It was
Mm,
like crime and drugs and like people coming from all over the world, and there was theft and organized crime rings and all these things because it was so free, right? And the only place I was truly free was in the walls of my own home because there was a boundary there. So the boundaries created the container for my actual freedom. So freedom needs a container. And like you said, or like a bondage to something else, like something like constraints create freedom. It's very hard to understand because I spent years as a libertarian that just thought like you had to cast off all bonds and cast off any sort of higher authority in order to be the most free, and that that was what was spiritually best. But it's not true. It's very strange to realize because it is a paradox. But it was, yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I found in the Orthodox or in Christianity in general, was like you are becoming like subservient to higher moral order, to higher principles, to like metaphysical principles. Like patience isn't like something you can touch with your hands. But if you make yourself like subservient to it, then when you are fasting, you can be patient, you can develop that,
mm,
and grow yourself spiritually by being subservient to like a higher order. So yeah, that's really what it came down to, is just realizing that we needed some sort of structure. And I mean, I feel like I was living in liberal cities for like most of my adult life, and they're very like all about getting rid of constraints and boundaries. In a way, they aren't, because if you like step out of the bounds of what they think is acceptable, they like totally cancel you or whatever. But a lot of their philosophy is about like casting off any sort of constraints or authority or yeah, or like just anything that would like constrain you in any way. um and so, but you live like that for a while and you see that it's just kind of entropy, like it's just you're kind of just going into the void, you know, it doesn't like actually produce anything. It doesn't grow you. And then there's no structure, there's no container in which your soul can grow. And I think if you're a person with a growth mindset, you eventually figure that out. And you like, even like for a while, my spiritual practice was like Buddhism, essentially, like meditating, right? And I would meditate, and the whole point of meditating is to like observe your thoughts and to detach. And I was realizing that as a spiritual practice, that it wasn't going to get me anywhere because it didn't give me any framework for how to live once I stepped off my yoga mat, right? It's like, okay, I've let go, you know, and I've detached, but nobody built anything in civilization by being detached. Like the people that built the most beautiful churches and buildings, some of them didn't even live to see them finished. Like, you know, it's not about being so attached to an outcome that you create suffering. I think outcomes are up to God, and you try your best and then you accept whatever the outcome is. But to be non-attached, like to have that as your higher order spiritual principle, like in Buddhism and the New Age, to let go of attachments, like that, then it's nihilism. It's like, why care? Then you don't care about anything. You know, what are you? Why build anything? Why try? Like, why do anything if your whole goal is to be non-attached? So like I said, it's like, in a sense, I think being unattached to outcomes, you want to shoot for outcomes while being unattached to them happening, like, because it might not happen. That's okay. But to make non-attachment your goal, the way that you like operate, I think there's a way to be equanimous about life and accept that things are always changing without becoming a nihilist, right? Like without deciding that my spiritual practice is all about like just being an observer and not being really in something. So, and even with marriage, you know, it's like you're in it, right? You're not, like, non-attachment is not the goal there, right?
Right.
So, and there's healthy and unhealthy attachment, but you know, just in general, I was realizing that this whole like casting off process, we're going to cast off boundaries, we're going to cast off authority, we're going to just make ourselves as free as possible, was just a total dead end. It's like the only way to explain it. So
When you when you recognize this, how long did it take you for you to break those bonds? Was that something difficult for you?
it
Because
was,
it was kind of the community that you had buried yourself in, and you are looking for a community.
yeah, it was hard. It was hard, and it was like there was a period of time where, well, honestly, I'm really grateful to God that he gave me a twin sister, because I sort of had a companion on this journey. But yeah, it was hard to like have to leave and rebuild. And really, like, the whole place where this was happening was in a place where I knew, like, in the back of my mind, didn't make sense for the long haul anyway. Like, American urban centers are very transient places. Like, the average person there isn't there for the long haul. You can't afford property. The average person can't afford property. You have to be very rich. Um, or the high population urban life starts to kind of grate on you, and you end up wanting more space or whatever. I mean, I guess some people stay in environments like that for their whole lives, but a lot of people are transient, and they're just there to get like career experience or find a spouse and leave or something. So there was a, like, so there is an aspect where it was like not that hard, because I was like, okay, I'm ready to go like invest somewhere where that's feasible and makes sense. Because unless you're like raking in a lot of cash in San Francisco, you're not gonna be able to like put your stake in the ground and like buy a house. You know, people do it, but I knew that I didn't work in like high tech. I wasn't gonna be able to do that. So yeah, but then there was like a period of, I don't know though, like maybe I'm just very social, but there was a period of kind of like, okay, I don't have any friends and I need to like make new friends. But then like it kind of is like a ball rolling down. What is the analogy with like a snowball rolling down a hill and it keeps like gathering as it goes?
Bach,
Um,
Bach, Bach. I'm being attacked.
Oh, by dogs?
Yeah. Have you not met my dogs?
I definitely have. You're on Zoom.
Oh God. All right, Bentley. Down. Nia.
They
Nia.
missed you.
Baby, can you come get the dogs, please? No. Oh, she's cooking.
She can't.
She's
Is she
like,
making
no.
a Lenten smoothie?
No, she's making some sort of pasta.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Okay, lock me in. I'm a prisoner in my own office.
Oh. Yeah, so I don't know. It was hard and not hard. Like it had to be done. And I found people who were coming from the same place as me, who were kind of like coming out of the left wing, like uh ethos and figuring this stuff out too. And I made friends. A lot of them were online though. Finding an in real life community is harder. Like internet communities kind of coalesce, but
Mm,
you need people in real life too. That can be challenging, but that's also good for your spiritual growth because like online you can cultivate a community of super like-minded people, but in real life you're gonna have people where you like butt heads or like they're a little difficult sometimes or like whatever, and all of that stuff grows you as well. Back to the concept of things not being perfect. Like that's good for you when things aren't perfect.
well, iron sharpens iron, so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
conflict can help. And it's when I was raised Baptist, and one of the things I didn't get out of the Baptist mindset that I have found in Orthodoxy
Mhm.
is they seemed very hesitant to admit that they had flaws.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Right. Well,
Like
so
as individual people?
yeah,
Hmm.
it was like you would see them on Sundays when you went to church and they were all buttoned up and everything was so perfect. And, you know, I'm walking in, you know, ticked off at, my now ex-wife that, she was sleeping around and like there was all this stuff going on. And I'm like looking at them and they're like, y'all are presenting yourselves as everything is so perfect. Maybe I don't belong here. Maybe my life is so chaotic and so out of whack that I don't belong in this atmosphere. And in Orthodoxy, I haven't found that. I've found people that are very open with their spiritual struggle
Hmm.
and and willing to discuss the struggles of life and
Yeah.
how they are attacking their problems. And I know back in the day there used to be public confession, like confession was done in public, and it was done like that in a way so that people could relate and they didn't feel like alone in these battles.
Mhm.
At least that's the way I read it. And in Orthodoxy, I find that a lot. There are people I can talk to about different things, different ideas, different thoughts, and not feel like I'm kind of an outsider. It's like, no, we're all dealing with these same types of temptations and passions and different problems. And having that foundation to kind of build upon as
Yeah.
far as your friendship, like I'm not going to judge you because I'm dealing with the same things you're dealing
Yes.
with, like that creates these strong, really strong bonds.
Yeah, so that's so funny that you say that because when I was in the new age communities, it was the same thing. And the way that I used to put it is I felt like no one was being honest with me about their shit. Like, and by that I mean like when I talk with people, it was all like, everything's great. Oh yeah, it's good. Oh yeah. It was always just the positive. And I was like, wait a minute, everybody has shit. Everybody has stuff that they're frustrated with, that they're dealing with, that they're struggling with. And if you never share that with me, then like how do we connect? Like it's good to share the positive stuff. That's all good. But life contains light and dark. So if you only are focused on the light, and this is the thing with kind of new ageism, is it's very love and light. That you hear that all that love and light, love and light. And it's like, yeah, cool. But also there's shit and darkness and struggle. And if we
Mm,
never acknowledge that, then it's not real. And so I maybe is that what you mean? Like people weren't honest about like the shit that was going on. They would just put on a facade that like everything was good.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's like I have 5 kids, and as I was raising my kids, I would make sure I would tell them like life's going to be hard. Like my parents always told me life's not fair, life's hard, like it's a
Yeah.
struggle. There are things you're going to have to tolerate, there are things you're going to have to sacrifice, there are going to think things you're going to have to put up with. And in the Baptist community or the non-denominational community, like depending on which church I was going to at the time, like I never found that. Like they didn't talk
Oh,
about that stuff. It was
interesting.
just like, yeah, everything's good. Thank God. And it's like, yeah, well, like thank God, but not everything's good. We're all
Yeah.
struggling. And
That's
God knows
exactly
we're all struggling, you
Yeah,
know?
that's exactly how the New Age community was. And it's weird because when I left the New Age community and I was exploring Protestant churches for a little bit, I noticed that the people there had the same look in their eyes. It's a little hard for me to explain, but it's sort of this like wide-eyed, like happy. I don't know. It's a little bit weird. Like there was something like missing, and it was a look in their eyes.
Like the Soundgarden Black Hole Sun video.
I don't know, but maybe.
Somebody's gonna get
Okay,
that.
good. I maybe it's the right analogy because it was just kind of like a happy emptiness or something where everything was just, yeah, love and light, everything's good. And that's not reality, you know. And I've always been drawn to people who can be honest about struggle and want to talk about the difficult things and explore the depths and the darkness um and if we can't do that, I don't know how to be close to you. Like if you're not honest with me about what you're struggling with, I don't know, I don't feel close to someone, you know.
Right.
So
Well,
and
and when I was in the Protestant community is when I got most of the tattoos I have. And most of the
oh,
tattoos I have are super dark. Super
oh,
dark.
interesting. So it was
And
like your outlet because you didn't have it.
right, because I had nowhere
Oh,
else to turn with it. I wrote
wow.
poetry, like in my spare time, I'd write short stories and I'd get tattoos, listen to heavy metal, and that was kind of my thing, drinking and just partying, just trying to like blow off steam. And I had nowhere to turn with it. And I was getting these tattoos and I would show up to church with new tattoos and nobody would say a word.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
They'd be like, "Oh, God bless you. You look so good." And I'm like, "No, I don't. I look like I was run over by a
Oh,
train because I drank a 30 pack of beer last night and I barely got out of bed this morning." Like,
wow.
and I knew they were lying to me. That
Mm,
was the thing. I knew I was being lied to. And I was
wow.
like, "What is wrong with you people?" You
It was
know?
the same thing. It was the same
And
thing
they were
when,
in the I'm sorry, in the
yeah,
same time they were asking me to teach Sunday school to teenagers. And I was like,
really.
really me? Like, yeah, I have a lot of knowledge and I can interpret a lot of these things, but come on, man. Like my life is obviously in shambles. Like I'm
Interesting.
obviously going through some stuff and
Man,
you just don't want to hear it.
the parallels with the new age are weird in that regard, where it's just like people would be obvious again with my drug addict friend. She was like obviously struggling. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to address it. When we did talk about it, it was, oh, just support her and give her, like it was just not like, yeah, like it sounds like you maybe needed tough love or something, or just like an acknowledgement of the darkness. And it's like good to focus on gratitude and good to focus on the things that are good for sure. But I don't know, like life, there is something to the yin yang of life, right? Like where the good contains the bad contains the good. Like I think that is real. And if you're not acknowledging like one end of things, um it's strange to me that Christians would be like that though, because and I see this, yeah, in Protestant circles, like just from what I see online or like videos where it does seem to be very like, it almost has, some of it almost has like a cheesy aspect to it, where it's all like the Protestant rock concerts and stuff. They almost end up being cheesy. And I think it's because there's no like edge there of acknowledging the darkness in a way that's like real. it's just all like, oh, it's great. Oh, praise God. Blah, blah. Like it's all that side of it.
Well,
We
that's what
need
the
that
bass
side of
solo is for.
that's what?
The bass solo is for.
Sure. I don't think it's getting the whole job done.
No,
Ugh.
but no, I completely get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
That's
And
fascinating.
in Orthodoxy, I found like this kind of reality, like this understanding of reality of what they life is happening to us all, and we're
Yeah.
all dealing with these struggles and these battles, and yeah, we come from it from different outlets and different points of view and different perspectives, but the community is, from what I've found, is not judgmental in any way. They're loving, they're kind, and they're understanding. I would use my godfather as an example. When the first time I ever walked in to St. Michael's Antiochian Orthodox Church was in October of 2021. And
Oh.
the first guy I met there was like 6'5", had long gray hair pulled back in a ponytail, looked like a biker that just put on a suit jacket, right? Over his
Yeah.
t-shirt. And I was like, all right. So I start talking to this big dude. Come to find out he's Lebanese, and he was cradle Orthodox. He left the church for like 30 years,
Oh
and then he
wow.
came back to the church as an adult and realized he needed a church. And like we related so well and got along so well. And that whenever I was chrismated and accepted into the church, I asked him to be my sponsor, my godfather, because I was like, this guy's just awesome. Like I just love this dude.
Yep.
He's a big dude. You know, he reminds me of so many of my family members, whether it's my dad, who's he's probably 6'3" now, but he was 6'4" and a half when I was growing up. He was a big guy. My uncle Tommy's 6'8".
Oh my gosh.
My grandpa Ralph was 6'6". Like my whole family, I'm the runt of the family. I'm 5'10", you know, like
Oh, that's
I'm the
wild.
runt. But just having that relation with him, like immediately upon meeting, and I was like, yeah, I like this guy because I got the long hair, the long beard, you know,
Yeah.
and so we kind of had that in common, and understanding that I can walk in there and talk to him and be like, he may not know any other faith, he may not know any other like Christian denomination, but he does understand that, hey, I'm struggling with things, I'm just getting into this, I'm 2 years in, you know, like trying to figure
Yeah.
this out, you know.
Yeah, and it's like if you have it's just nice knowing that I don't know, the people you find in the Christian church and the Orthodox church are aware of that and trying to be better. Like that's the whole thing. Because I learned that when you build a community around a shared interest or activity, that isn't necessarily present. Like people in my community were trying to get better at flow arts or circus arts, right? That
Mhm.
was what they were striving towards, which cool. That's an aspect of my life still, trying to get better at my dance practice. But that I realized I couldn't build like that couldn't be the foundation of my community because it you need like these shared values about that where you're trying to improve your own soul and improve your relationships with others and just improve your life and the lives of those around you and have a duty to those around you. Like that has to be the focus. So my dance instructor would always say shared interests don't mean shared values. So the thing with the people you meet in the Orthodox Church is like you have those shared values. And then there's variance as far as people's interests and, you know, uh, the things they like to do. But because the values are shared, that's what makes for a really strong community. It's actually good, even if we have different interests, right? It's like, I always think about the whole, like, the concept of the body of Christ and how, like, it's like you don't need like 10 eyeballs. You need two eyes and a liver, right? And like we're all serving different purposes.
Yeah.
Um, and then the whole body works. So, yeah, but there's that shared like underlying core of acknowledging the light in the dark, trying to be better, trying to help one another be better, kind of that social accountability aspect too. Because I realized living in cities that there was no social accountability really. Like I gave that example of my friend who her boyfriend went off on a trip and was like messing around with another woman, but there was no accountability for him. And I found that just living in cities and like urban communities that weren't Christ centered, there wasn't accountability because everything, it was like people weren't there for the long haul. They were probably going to move. People didn't share values, so there was no social enforcement of behavior. Like there's something about like a small community or a community with shared values where like if somebody's acting up, people set them straight. Like for example, I'll give you an example. Like, and maybe you're not, I don't know how familiar you are with like modern dating culture, but people talk a lot about ghosting, right? That's when like you're dating someone or you're talking to them and then they just one day totally stop responding to you. And people are very hurt by that behavior. Well, how did ghosting become a thing? It's a modern phenomenon in the digital age. Was because there's no social accountability in an actual community. If you were dating somebody and then they just randomly stopped speaking to you, other people would be like, hey, Bob, like, why are you treating Susan that way? Like, she says you haven't talked to her in 2 weeks and you guys were going out and this and that. Like, he wouldn't get away with it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But in the modern world where we're not like really in real communities and we're not embedded in like a social structure, people can get away with really crappy behavior. And that's how you get things like that's how you get promiscuity and stuff too, right? Because like in a small or tight-knit community or community with shared values, like if you're sleeping around, people will talk about it. You can't really like get away with it. It'll be socially enforced through um, just the community aspect of shame or whatever it is, people knowing about it. So there's something with like the anonymity and the digital age where we can kind of like retreat into our little atomized cells of individuality that you just there's no pressure on you to be a better person. Like that's such an important aspect of a church is that there's like eyeballs on you. you know, People know you and they know what you're going through and they know what you're struggling with. And if you get out of line, like maybe, there's people you can like work it out with.
Mm.
So I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right on that. And I was thinking about it just now too. I was talking about going to a Baptist church and non-denominational church, and it was like these were only my friends on Sunday. Like I didn't talk
Oh,
to these people during the week. Like I
mm,
didn't spend any time with. I mean, there, one of the churches I went to, like some, like I would, or some of a couple of the churches I went to, I would know people outside of church before I started attending that church, and
okay.
therefore we had that relationship already built. For the most part, most of the people I didn't see like
Mm,
outside of church. It was like, nope, like you're a
wow.
church friend, like that's it. You're
People,
some guy I barely remember your name. I know you by your face and I say hi to you. And I don't even say hi, Bob, because I can't remember if your name's Bob or Rob. So
yeah. And like, I think maybe there are always going to be people that like just attend church as like a duty. I saw this a lot in the Catholic communities where it was like just a box to check so that you don't go to hell or something. like oh, I did my duty and now I'm done, or I got communion and now I'm done. And it wasn't really about being like embedded in the social aspect or like really getting to know somebody and being there for them. So, and I think people are like allergic to that these days. Like people don't want to be like bothered and um I don't know, like they don't want to have any demands placed upon them through which is what can happen when you forge social connections. Like people might need help or they might need a hand or like whatever it is, and then there's demands placed upon you and people like don't like that because we have this like individualistic, like leave me alone, I want to do what I want to do sort of culture. And a church is sort of like antithetical to that. You go there and you should be there for people and help people that need help. And so yeah, that's interesting though, because I haven't spent a lot of time in Protestant circles. So, but what you described sounds a lot like the New Age communities I was in, because those are like spiritual communities, and they have some like spiritual practices and stuff, and they have some ritual where maybe they meet every Sunday at the same place and do their
Mm-hmm.
shared activity.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a similar thing where like I didn't feel like I could call them if I needed help moving a couch or something. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like I didn't really feel like people wanted to be there for me. And I just got that sense. So there's something about Orthodoxy, like it does have that focus on suffering, which I think my first couple of years, I was like, all we talk about is suffering. And like, aren't we supposed to enjoy life too? But like the fact that that is a focus is good, because then if that's on your mind, then you know that other people are suffering too, and they have their struggles. And I would always do this thing where I'd like hallucinate that other people had a perfect life. And I'm like, they've got it great. They don't have any problems. Like I would like, you know, and I only like in the last year have I been like, stop doing that. Like, cause I would like project that somebody had a perfect life, and then I'd find out like some difficult thing they're going through, you know?
Yeah.
So everybody has something. But if all you're focused on is like the positive side of things, it's just, yeah, it's not reality. And then how are you going to like really be there for people if like that's your mindset? Like you said, these people at your church that were just kind of like, hi on Sundays and everything's great, la la la. It's like, that ain't real, you know? So
Well, and yeah, if that is what your life is, then what do you and I have in common? You know, like
yeah, yeah, exactly.
so,
Yeah,
so I cannot relate to that, you know. So
exactly. Yeah, it's
I
true.
I want to cover one more like short topic.
Okay.
Well, it can be as long as you want it to be, but before we get off here, but I wanted to ask you because you said like you benefited from having a twin and entering the
Yeah.
church together with a twin.
Mhm.
And I imagine that you and your twin is as alike as y'all are, which I'm sure is plenty alike.
Mhm.
Y'all don't necessarily always feel the exact same way. So how important is it that you have this kind of not only bond to your twin, but kind of a responsibility to Amy that you don't feel like going to church sometimes, but you go to be with her, or maybe other people in the church, that you feel a responsibility to the community of your church, that it pulls you out of bed and puts you into liturgy, and how grateful and thankful are you? Because I know there are times I don't want to get up. I'm like, no, it's Sunday. It's the only day off I have all week. I'm just gonna lay here. I just want to sleep, and I
Yep.
make myself get up. I make myself go to church, and I'm never disappointed when I
Yep.
go. I'm
Yep.
always grateful that I went. And the
Yep.
only times I ever feel disappointment are the days I don't make myself
Yep.
go.
Yep.
You know?
It's funny. Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's like it's weird. Like I sort of think about, yeah, there's days where my church starts so early too. Like I only know of two churches where the liturgy starts at 9, but to me that's really early, and I live a half hour from the church. It's like I'm not a morning person. Um, Other people will laugh at me and be like, that is not early. But to me it is. So but yeah, it's like I miss people if I don't go. Like I feel, yeah, like you said, it's like I feel worse if I don't. For as bad as it feels sometimes to like get up and get out of bed and do that. Um, I know that I miss people when they're not there. Like, and I'm like wondering where they are, and I like wish they were there because I love them, you know.
Or are
So
they okay? Is
yeah,
everything?
are they
Yeah,
okay? Or like
yeah.
whatever it is. So it's like very human and important, I think, to see the same faces regularly and to like keep an eye on each other or whatever. Um, and Yeah, but it's like having that. I think the thing with having a twin is more that I have a sort of, I've had a sort of life hack of being able to be exploratory and let go of things that aren't good because I had a buddy going with me. Like maybe it would have been harder to detach from the new age community if I didn't have a buddy to exit it with me and go on to the
Mhm.
next thing. It's kind of like that. Even like that's always been the case too. Like even in grade school, it was like I didn't feel any issues standing up to bullies because I knew I always had a friend, right? It's not like
Mhm.
I'm gonna be like, I've never had that same fear that I think singletons probably have of not having a tribe. Like I've had a built-in like buddy, so I could take more risks. I don't know. I'm not a singleton, so I don't know like to what
You
degree that's
just
an
you
issue.
just dropped singleton twice, and you know what? This is the first time I've ever heard that outside of somebody's last name.
Yeah, it's what we call it. I said that word once, and somebody goes, "I didn't know that twins had a derogatory term for non-twins." I was like, "It's not derogatory; it's a medical term. It's like an actual term." Yeah. So
It's like calling people that don't watch, like, don't keep up with politics normies. I'm like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I guess.
I could try. The other one's like single birthed person, but that sounds clunky.
No, no, I like singleton. That works.
It's pretty good.
That's awesome.
See, today you learned
I
a
think
single.
that's the first time I've ever heard that used though.
Yeah, you didn't even know you were a singleton, but you
I didn't
are.
even know.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of what that's kind of been my experience of being a twin, is that I have like backup, so I can kind of be higher in openness and explore things. I know someone's like doing that with me, but yeah, then there's also the aspect of, yeah, like it's true. Like in the morning sometimes, because we live together, it's like, I'm tired. I don't want to get up, but I heard Amy get up. So like, I'm going to get up and go to church, and it's like, if it was just me, would I have that inner drive to like do what I know I need to do? And maybe that's the whole concept of the church community too. It's like, you can't do this alone. You need to know other people are on that journey with you, or striving with you to it like motivates you, something like that.
Well, and knowing that, like, if I, and I'm not saying I make perfect attendance, because I'm not, I don't. And knowing that the day I don't go to church, I'm going to hear from about three or four people via text message. I'm like, okay, I better just suck it up, Buttercup,
Yeah.
because
They miss you.
I'm not only letting myself down, I'm letting other people down. And yeah, they're just like, hey man, is everything going okay? It's like last year, Beatrix got bit by a copperhead.
Oh,
My son got shot, ended up
oh,
having to have like reconstructive surgery on his arm. And I let that be an excuse for me to wallow in my own self-pity and not go to church for a
mm,
few Sundays. And people that knew what was going on were texting me like, "Hey,
yeah,
dude, you all right? Is everything
yeah.
okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm all right. I just gotta get out of this little funk I'm in, because I'm just feeling sorry for myself, like a total noob." So
Well, I don't know. Like, tell me if you're this way or not. I find that if I'm upset or like not well, the last thing that is good for me is retreating from people. But I know a lot of people's instinct is to withdraw when something's wrong. But I don't, I try to not do that because I know that that'll just make it worse. There's just something about like other people being in the shit with you, or at least listening, or like just being there or whatever, that like makes all of that stuff easier. Um, so I don't know. Are you the type that like withdraws when things are hard, or
I mean,
like
I withdraw when things are good. So like I'm very much like, you wouldn't know it by listening to my podcast, but I'm such an introvert. Like my entire life is I go to work, and when I get home, I go sit on my front porch and I watch the grass grow.
cool?
Like that's my life. I watch the chickens run around. Like that's it. And so I'm perfectly satisfied in that space, that
Mm.
even my wife is like, "Hello, I need your attention." And I'm like,
Whoa, wow.
and I
Yeah.
mean, she's 5 feet from me, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. Like there's somebody else here."
Wow.
So that's just who I am. That's
Okay.
always been my personality. So
Mm.
it's very easy for me to, yes, retreat into my own world and just forget anything else exists. I
See that?
must have sat outside for 2 hours the other day and stared at the oak tree next to my driveway, and just examining how green and beautiful it was. I'm fine with that. Like that's my safe space.
Yeah.
you know.
It's not a bad quality. In fact, I wish I could be like a little more like that. I kind of lose my mind if I'm not extremely social. Like I only need like 2 hours of alone time a week, probably.
Yeah.
Like I am hyper social. So I'm a little bit, it's not that I can't just sit and do nothing. It's just that I prefer to be around people. It's not that even that it's not that I'm trying to like escape myself either. Like I can be alone. I just don't prefer it.
Mm.
I like activity and stimulation and banter and people. So then that's interesting. So like for you,
Well, it's also difficult for me too because I was over the road truck driver for many years.
so you're used to being alone.
So being alone is like just the natural habitat for me, after doing that for so long. And when I would do that, I would go over the road for like 2 weeks. I'd be by myself. My wife would call me every night. We'd talk for a little bit and then I'd go to bed. I'd get up in the morning and I'd just be driving,
Yeah.
listening to audiobooks and just kind of observing the scenery and enjoying the world. And when I would come home after a couple of weeks, her and I would sit on the front porch and just bullshit and drink beer for 2 days straight. We wouldn't do
Mhm.
anything else. We would sit there and just spend time together. But now that I work locally, I work for a retail company and I'm engaging with people every day. It's
Mm.
actually very difficult for me to adapt to deal with that. And
Oh,
so by the end of the day, I'm so mentally tired from
yep.
dealing with people that I'm
Mhm.
like, just leave me alone,
I could see that.
you
So then,
know?
like, so do you find a lot of benefit in the social aspect of church, or is it sometimes difficult? Like,
I do, but it's like it can't be more than two people at a time.
mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
there if there's like if there's like a group of people standing around talking, I'm not gonna enter into that.
Oh,
I'll
interesting.
stand outside of that and
Oh.
I'll talk to my buddy who I have a really good friend I go to church with, and we're real close. We text all the time.
Mhm.
He's an ex cop, and he's he's former military, so he and I get along great. He works as a park ranger now, and so like I'll sit and I'll chat with him. We'll talk, but I won't engage in that large group of people.
Okay.
That is so
Yeah.
far outside of who I am. I'll stand
Yeah.
there and I'll just watch. And when somebody talks to me, I'll talk to that person. But
Yeah.
like it's like
Yep.
I can't do the big crowd thing.
Yeah, I'm totally the opposite. But I'm Italian, so I'm just like people, more people, let's go. Like I'm like it's in my blood, I
My
think.
mom's like that. My
Yeah.
mom loves that. And
Yeah.
I'm outspoken much like my mom is, but I have
Yeah.
that introverted kind of like dynamic that my dad has. And it's just like I'll just no, give me a book. Let me watch some grass grow, you
Yeah.
know, play some poetry and some classical music and I'm good. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
I don't need
Well, I think
anything.
like I think one of the ways that like the social aspect of church is helpful is that it's kind of like it kind of forces me, and I'm not an expert at this at all, and I have a long way to go, but it like forces me to think about someone other than myself. Like it's too easy to just like, I don't know, do what's good for me. But if I'm in a community, it's like you see it forces me to think like, how can I be useful to other people, and I could be much more useful than I am. But I think there's also like if I feel like, yeah, like immersing myself in a community, not only do I get a lot of just pleasure out of socializing just because I think it's fun and I like people and I like their stories, but I think there's also a part of me now that like wants to get ingrained with people because um if I could be useful to them, that's like good for me to like be less selfish and like see ways that people need help. And again, I'm not like great at this. And I think probably still most of my life is, helping myself, but like I still want to grow in that and be better about that. Like I've had friends that have really shown me like what it means to be like generous or to think about someone else first. And it made me realize just how like bad I have been at that. Like just thinking about someone else first, just like what they might want or doing something thoughtful for them. I met people who are so good at that, and I really want to grow in that. So, kind of like forcing myself to be in a community and really immersed in it is helping me to get better at that. I still have a long ways to go. But like that aspect of church and like showing up every week and people keeping tabs on you, right? It's like it's good for me to have a sort of like a sense of duty there, if that makes sense. Whereas if I wasn't there that often, if I was there like once every 3 months or something, not only would I not have the opportunity to be like duty bound to anybody, but people wouldn't be duty bound to me, you know? So it's kind of this like give and take, sort of symbiotic thing. And that's a totally different thing than your level of extroversion or introversion, by the way. It's just like, it's just all that's just to say that like it's good that people notice when you're not there and want to like keep tabs on you and make sure you're okay. You know, it's a very good thing. A lot of people don't have that, you know.
Well, it's
So
funny because I might be in a lot of ways the exact opposite of you, because though I'm an introvert and I just want to be like wrapped like completely like in silence and just kind of zoned out, I have like this real heart of service and I love doing for other people.
yeah.
And I found myself in a situation a few weeks ago where I was able to help some young kid out,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like the expression on the kid's face whenever I was able to help him. He was like, "I didn't even know you knew who I was," because I am so like
Oh, pulled
closed
back.
off,
Yeah.
like that I
Mm-hmm.
don't like express myself very
Yeah.
often. And so it felt good to do that. And
Yeah.
so I think we're all getting something out of that ability to be involved in that and
Yeah.
give and learn. And that brings you closer, because then it's like, oh, okay, like this person isn't what I thought they were. This person
Yeah.
isn't what I, like
Yeah.
what, what I that I the crotchety old bastard that I thought he was, like,
And
because
then
I
you
that
know,
is
and
a lot of times how I come off. Like,
that
yeah,
does.
okay, hey, how are you doing? Yeah,
Well,
like,
it's easy to sort of like profile people. Like, um, yeah, like truly, I'm sure people do profile you that way. I think people probably profiled me as being like stuck up or something, you know, I don't know, but like, and then it's, oh, I thought she was this way, but then I got to know her and she's not. But it's good to like know and be known, right? And you kind of have to crack the surface with people, and you need some sort of way to like facilitate that. And like church is very, I get upset when there are people that like come to church but never come to coffee hour because I'm like, I want to know you. I want to know who you are and like and like why don't you come to coffee hour? There's like a young family that comes to church, not every week, but sometimes, and I just want to know who they are and like talk to them and like have them be a part of the thing, but they never come to coffee hour. So, um, yeah, I don't know. It's just like, and I'm sure they're not who I think they are, right? Like I can just look at the surface level and I'm like, oh, they're so put together and this and that, but they probably have their struggles and they have their stuff that they have to give, which is probably not even what I would think it is. You know, like everybody's different. And it's nice to know people like that.
I had a guy give me a hug last week, shake my hand, give me a hug, call me brother, and I don't know his name,
Yeah.
because it's a young couple that's been coming to the church, and I've said hi to them, and because they always sit like right behind me. So
Mhm.
I'm there, and I'll turn, I'll see them. Hey, how are y'all doing? We haven't even exchanged names, like, but they're, and so sometimes it's just that little bit. Sometimes
Yeah.
that little bit that'll lead that person to the coffee hour at some point.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
That's true. And I try to like, I think I've kind of tried to be that person where if someone is new, I try to like find them at the end of liturgy and be like, hi, do you live around here? What's your story? Blah, blah, blah. Hoping to like invite them because maybe people feel like they need the invite, you know, like they need someone they can talk to once they get down there that they've connected with. I say down there because our coffee hour is in a basement. But um, yeah, it's good. Like I always remember the people that did that for me. You know, they recognized that I was new and they're like, hi, come to coffee hour. Who are you? Blah, blah, blah. So it's good to be that person. But it does take a level of like being comfortable breaking the ice, which I've also had to learn because I've had a tendency to be like, people don't want to hear from me. I'm not going to bother people. I don't want to bother people. You know, I've had to like kind of force myself to be like, no, bother people. They're not going to feel bothered. Like they'll just perceive it as like warmth and invitational. So
There was an old man that that I went to church with, he just passed away here recently. And they called him the church historian. I mean, it wasn't like his like designated title, but that's what they called him. And if there was a new person that showed up to church, he would go sit with that person and he would talk them through the liturgy and he would
Cool.
explain everything that was going on.
Yes.
He
Love it.
must have been in his late 80s, 90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And he just passed away here recently. And one of my good friends at church is a guy that was his godson. And we talk a lot about him because the first time I went to church, I had already been like watching Lord of Spirits. I'd already been reading books. I was already like thinking about this. I had been examining orthodoxy for a while. And I started asking him questions, and he got so excited that people around us were like, shh.
Yeah.
Like, and so the next time I went, I felt so embarrassed by the first time that I was like, no, you can't, don't worry about sitting with me, blah, blah, blah. But
Oh,
he and I developed a really close relationship. He was a really good guy. And and I just I know that the priest at my church said, now that he's gone, we're going to need those people that are going to go to the new people,
yeah.
that are going
Yep.
to say hi to those new people and make them feel
Yep.
welcome because we're Antiochian. We're supposed to be hospitable. And
Yep.
it's like, all right. Like,
Yeah.
so I always try to remember that and at least shake a hand and, hey, nice to see you. How are you? I'm
Yep.
Tommy. Like, where you
Yeah.
come from? I don't have a lot of experience here, just like you don't. So, you know,
Yeah.
let's just, have a conversation and see where it goes. And
Yeah.
I've tried to remember that and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
that
important.
helps a lot, knowing that people want to feel welcome. They want
Yes.
that to feel like they belong. They want
Yep.
that sense of community.
Yeah.
And there are too many places that people go that they don't feel welcome. The body of Christ is not one of those places that it should be feel that way.
Right. Exactly. Well said. I don't even think I can follow that.
You got anything you want to add before we end this?
No, I think this is good though. Good topic. Not one I've something I've thought about a lot, but never actually like talked about in depth like this on a show. So I appreciate the invite and the thought. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have two more on this topic. I got Dissident Mama I'm recording with next week, and the
Cool.
week after that I'm recording with Rachel Wilson. So we're gonna dig into some community aspects of Orthodoxy and the
Yeah.
importance of community for women and how that can not only benefit the women but also kind of show them their role and vibe in them this confidence of engaging in the church when their husbands go crazy and dive in. So
Yes. I think one other thing I'll say about it is there can be like almost like overly zealous online Orthodox people that are very obsessed with the right way to live and how to be the most perfect trad, whatever it is, person. And going to a church really can like break you out of that because you see that people have all different situations. They have all different life situations. They have all different struggles. They have all different like things that they have, things that they lack, like strengths, weaknesses, like gifts, like discrepancy, like whatever it is. And it kind of breaks you out of this sort of like ideology that I can see happening sometimes in online orthodoxy of like this hubristic perfection or ideal. I saw a lot with like very trad people. Or like you're just worthless if you're over 30 and unmarried and you don't have 10 kids and you don't have cows and chickens and right, like that kind of thing, which I think is really toxic.
I
It's a
had chickens
reaction
before
against,
I was Orthodox. Thank you very much.
yeah, you're fine. But like it's a reaction against modernity, which like I get, but there's also just so many different situations and going to church and being in that community helps me at the end of the day to just have compassion for people. for me to be, it compels me to be better, and it helps me to have compassion for all the different difficult situations and life situations that people face. So I think
Right.
I'll end on that. Yeah.
Okay. Where can we find you and Amy?
Well, we have the Mystic Sisters podcast. We're on Substack and YouTube. If you type in Mystic Sisters Twins, it should come up. Um, yeah, and then I'm also on Twitter, and my handle is Julie Writes.
Julie writes. What are you
Yeah.
writing?
Well, I write a lot about media bias. Lately I've been podcasting more than writing, though. I need to change my handle to like Julie Talks.
And let's give your sister a plug for her iconography.
Yeah, yes. She actually just finished a really beautiful icon of Saint Susanna. But yeah, she's an iconographer. She writes beautiful icons, and she's Amy the Artist on Twitter and Instagram. And I believe her website is also Amy the Artist. But she's open for commissions, and she does really beautiful works. Like if you have a favorite saint and you want an icon, she does a really good job. So yeah,
I'll be in touch with her pretty soon, I'm sure.
sweet. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Awesome.
I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay, thanks, Tommy.
Yes, ma'am.